do that, that's really.
Oh wait, I can pause it. All right. Well, thank you so much everyone for being here. I'm just going to introduce myself briefly and then I'll hand it over to Erica. I'll also introduce Erica. My name is Becca Phillips. I am the Climate and Health Fellow here at PSR National, and I also oversee our new Next Gen Ambassador program with some wonderful young and emerging health professionals all over the US and across the world. And I am going to now introduce Erica, who is our speaker tonight. Erica is a US-born educational innovator, physician, medical and educational researcher, politician, and public health advocate. She is a preventative medicine specialist and environmental activist, pioneering the use of digital learning in medical education. In 2001, Erica founded nextgenu.org, the world's first portal to free accredited higher education, including medical school, public health, and residency teaching. There is also a whole section on climate and health curriculum as well there. Starting with a focus in health sciences, NextGenU partners with leading universities, professional societies, and government organizations, including the CDC, World Bank, and WHO, giving learners throughout the world credit for this training, all free and carbon-free. As a professor and Canada Research Chair in Preventative Medicine and Population Health at the University of British Columbia, Erica also researches physicians' personal and clinician prevention habits. Erica has traveled and worked in over 60 countries and owned the first energy independent home in Georgia. Erica, we are so happy to have you here, and I'll leave it to you to take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Becca. Thanks for the applause, Ola, but I hope that this will be an interaction that will be more chatty than applauding, right? So Becca asked me to talk a little about my journey that brought me here, and particularly, I think I'd like to emphasize some about my journey with PSR and sister organizations, about nextgenu.org a little more, and in particular, the climate change and health curriculum that we have that is co-sponsored by PSR, to talk a little generally about curriculum and shareable curriculum and free curriculum, and then talking about how to incorporate environmental justice into all of these pieces. So I'm going to meander, and I want to be able to do this in a way that I hope will be engaging, and I hope that you'll feel free to ask questions as we go through. There are some places where I want to stop and particularly engage you if you don't leap in otherwise. So please do. All right. So just to tell you a little bit more about my concrete background, I grew up in Princeton and left for Smith when I was 15 and went to Smith College, and was in the Honors and Independent Studies program there, where I had the great fortune to create my own curriculum. And this notion of being able to take deep responsibility for one's own learning is something that was important to me then, and it obviously for all of us as adult learners, being able to figure out how do you learn best and what kinds of tools are most useful for you is something that all of you who are now in your training are figuring out every day when you make decisions about, do I listen to a lecture or read a book or do some other medium? So I hope that these notions about thinking about curriculum will be useful for you in your activities of daily living as well. So after I graduated from Smith, I didn't get into medical school the first year that I applied. And so I took 9 months and got my master's in public health at Emory, and did my thesis at CDC, and worked at CDC for that time. And that was an extraordinary experience. And something that gave me tools for the tick that we were talking about before, of doing advocacy and improving health globally. It has always been clear to me that if if helping one person in a clinical setting was a good thing to do as a doc, that helping many people in many settings was an even better thing to do. So when I graduated from med school, I knew that I wanted to do a preventive medicine residency. Went my sophomore year of med school to Yale, to the preventive medicine residency program director, and said, I'm going to come here in 3 years after I finish my internship, and I'm going to do my practicum with Lifetime Medical Television. And they found that, I suppose, sort of amusing and perplexing, but that is indeed what I did. And that was an extraordinary experience. I did my internship at the Cleveland Clinic, and then my residency at Yale in preventive medicine. And then I got to do a 3-year preventive medicine fellowship, NIH sponsored, at Stanford. And that really taught me so many skills about community organizing and working with communities for social change and for improvements in health. So from there, I went to Emory, where I was until 2006, when I came to UBC, University of British Columbia, to be the Canada Research Chair in Preventive Medicine and Population Health. And through all of these experiences, like I introduced at the beginning, PSR has been a thread, and along with some sister organizations that I'll talk about as well. Pausing there for any initial questions, and to say hello to Daniel and to Mitchell. Glad to have you both with us. Any questions that you have for starters there, or? Okay. So I am going to show you first this article, and I'll put the link in the chat in a moment as well. But this is, if you want to learn more about any of the bits that I'm talking about today, this is a good place to go. And in particular, I'd encourage you to spend a moment thinking about this for yourself. And I want us to just talk about this together for a minute. So these are the criteria that I, on some reflection, decided would really be the most truncated way for me to identify what kinds of things should I volunteer on or work on. And so these were the criteria that spoke to me particularly. And I wondered if we could pause here for a moment, and if some of you could talk about either how some of these strike you as resonant for you, or other ideas that you might have. And then I'm going to tell you about how I used these criteria to decide to consult with DuPont, which will probably be, given all of the charitable NGO kind of talking I've been doing so far, might surprise you. But thoughts from anyone on these bits? And I'll go ahead and paste it into the the chat so you can look at it directly too, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think I just say like definitely resonate with a lot of these things, and I think probably naturally like a lot of us who are in public health and medical fields and stuff do desire towards more like change and kind of idealism, and so I think like it's wise to have a set of principles that can help you make decisions, because I definitely identify with like saying yes to a lot of causes that I care about, and trying to volunteer a lot. And I think in this current stage of being in medical school, like it often comes at a sacrifice to like my academics, and so I think I'd be looking for wisdom on kind of how to prioritize and still make sure that I'm like focusing on what I need to. Mhm.
Yeah, so maybe if I could just address that for a minute. One way that I found that was extremely useful to do that in med school was, and subsequently, was to work with professional organizations like PSR, like American College of Preventive Medicine, American Public Health Association, AMA. I've been to 30 plus AMA meetings representing the American College of Preventive Medicine. I got the first climate change and health policy passed through the AMA. I have gotten policy passed on dioxins. It's really, so finding organizations like that that allow you to have both personal professional growth and also that allow you to serve and to work on the causes that you care about. That's a really sweet spot, I think, if you're trying to figure out how to implement some of these kinds of values. Comments from others or thoughts from others on this?
I feel like, at least for me, I like definitely adhere to some of these rules, but then other ones of them I feel like I completely ignore, which then makes me not as efficient in like what my goals are as like a volunteer and advocate. Like my both of my parents are immigrants from Poland, so I'm like very passionate about like helping like increase healthcare access to non-English speakers. And so I feel like whenever an opportunity to get involved with something pops up, I like jump on it, but then I'm kind of like running around and not really like committing fully to one thing, but just kind of spreading myself thin. And then, very passionate about the environment. And so I feel like keeping those things in mind, like who is someone that you can rely on who's like already an advocate or like an ally, and then just kind of like playing to your strengths, like what am I good at and how can I most effectively use my time.
Excellent. I'm looking up another citation that support. I wasn't just being distracted. I recognize I'm still sharing my screen. There we go. This article is the first place that I sort of articulated this issue, this maxim, for me, a guiding principle, really the most essential reduction of those 10 principles, the concept of efficient beneficence. And to me, even that, and I'll paste that one into the chat as well, and then maybe I'll stop screen sharing, unless anybody else needs to see that list. Stop share. And I'll share this in the chat. So efficient beneficence, like I said, I think is actually even kind of redundant even in its two words, because to me, you're not really doing beneficence unless you're doing it efficiently. So it, and you guys all know this, you wouldn't be involved with PSR and the gravest threats, right? If you didn't recognize that it's key to work with efficiency on whatever it is that you do, because if you don't work efficiently, your goals aren't going to get achieved. And these goals that we're all co-striving for merit it. So let me transition to telling you, hi, Steve, and hello, Maitra. I hope I'm Maitri. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I'm going to transition to talking about, and I'll just paste this in again for those who joined later and therefore might not see it. I'm going to talk about how I applied those 10 principles in deciding to work with DuPont. So DuPont's the only company that I've ever worked with, otherwise been entirely in the nonprofit sector. And this happened because I had volunteered with the American Medical Women's Association, and a colleague there was tapped by DuPont when they got the largest settlement, $150 million settlement from the EPA that they had to pay because of pollution with perfluorooctanoic acid, PFOA, a major constituent of Teflon and other historically, and other products. I was really wary because, I mean, they'd just been slapped with this big suit and they clearly were not the sort of folks that I wanted to hang out with. But I also thought it was kind of an interesting opportunity to be able to see, well, I mean, can I actually influence from inside, right? And do it in a way where I don't have to feel at all compromised. So that was the tricky part for me, was number 9, right? Doing things in a way that feel like ethical, loving, and appropriate. And so I'm going to tell you 2 stories from 2 of the dinners that we had. We had a dinner every time we met twice a year. And every time we met with the president of DuPont, which was part of what lured me, because I thought if we were getting a hearing at that kind of level, I could really make a difference. So first meeting, we have our first half-day of meetings, and then we go to the cocktail hour that they had before the dinner, and then we go to the dinner, and we get to the dinner, and the president gets introduced by the chair of our committee. And first thing he says, you know, after, glad to be here, glad to be with you all, is, Dr. Frank, so we had we have this new soy milk that we are providing, and we had some of it at the cocktail hour for you, because you indicated that you would prefer a vegan diet. And so I, you know, this was a lovely internal smile moment for me, because this was, again, the first thing that he said. And when I got the invitation, I really was racking my brain about how am I going to be non-rudely, but immediately out that, you know, they really need to recognize that they're not going to have a yes person. And so there was this opportunity on the form that they had us fill out before the meeting of, do you have any special dietary restrictions? And I wasn't a particularly adherent, consistent vegan always, but I thought, aha, this is a place for me to signal the kinds of things that I'm going to be looking for. So I did. And so this pleased me that he said this. So that was the first uptake. So yes, yes, thank you. I tried it. It was very good. That was my response. And then he said, so I'm so glad to hear that. Are you going to buy it? And like at this point, everyone, they all have had a half day of me already. So they sort of are all a little quaky about what I'm going to come up with here. And I said, well, while it was delicious, it is GMO. And if I have a choice between a genetically modified soy milk and one that's organic, I'm going to pick the organic one every time. Big hush. And the president of DuPont, to his great credit, said, this is going to be an outstanding advisory board. So that was, really thrilling that I came in prepared to say, well, I'm going to have to resign in a huff and write letters to the editor, right? And it was welcomed. So that was the first meeting. And then I'll skip forward to a much later meeting, and then I will show you a bit about Next Gen U's climate change and health course, and then we can hopefully do more dialoguing. So a few years later at dinner, same president, and he always gave a report, and he said that they were planning, that they had just put in a bid to operate the Savannah River nuclear site. And I, yeah, that was kind of my face, apparently, Barb. So I thought I politely responded when he tells a story. He said, and then Dr. Frank almost fell off her chair. So, but I had been working with Ed Arnold and many other volunteers from PSR for many years to try to get the Savannah River nuclear site shut down when I was the president of Atlanta PSR. And how I responded verbally was to say, I think you should consider withdrawing your bid. I think that this is a bad industry to be in for the world. And I think it's a bad industry to be in for DuPont in terms of public perception after you've just had this big EPA suit slapped on you, and in terms of what kind of safety company, which was their huge push, you want to be. And I will pay for PSR volunteers, if they're willing, to come to Wilmington and talk to you about why this is a bad idea. And so that's what I did. I offered that because the people I worked with, many of them could ill afford to be able to fly to Wilmington. And also because I knew they wouldn't accept money from DuPont to do so. And that was an easy way to remove barriers. So we did that, and DuPont withdrew their bid. And it was a one-day meeting, and we had some time with the Vice President of Sustainability, and we talked through all of the issues in great detail. And that was one of the most extraordinary outcomes I've ever had. And it was indeed a function of working from inside, but doing it in a way that I was fully out with my values, and in fact expected to act in that way. So maybe I'll pause there and see if you guys have any thoughts or reactions or on that.
I actually just have a question. Could you clarify a little bit what DuPont does and your relationship with them, like what you were working with them for?
Yeah. So as part of their punishment from EPA, they besides the $150 million fine, they had to construct a health advisory board and an epidemiology advisory board that they would interact with prospectively, so that they wouldn't make the issue was that PFOA was getting into the downstream wastewater And it is a persistent organic pollutant, and it is chemical trespass in the body of every mammal on the planet. So we were there to help them evaluate the data to make sure that this didn't happen again, and to get them to keep them on schedule for making sure that they removed PFOA from their waste stream. And we did. It was ahead of schedule, like years ahead of schedule. They got to 99% removal. So yeah, so that was my role. It was very explicitly to be there, to be an ethical and scientific ear for them, objective one. All right. So, and anybody else on any of that, or I'll go on to some next Gen U related bits? All right.
Yeah, I think I would
Yeah,
I just say like, yeah, that seems like a really interesting position to be in. Like in a sense, it's, could feel like David versus Goliath, but also thinking about like, I guess your focus was just on this like smaller project and making sure that they're held accountable for that. Did you feel, I guess it's like, yeah, we can't, it's hard as a society and with the way that our like profit systems are set up to really like hold a lot of these polluters accountable. So did you feel like kind of that work you did had a long-term effect, and yeah, like kind of what role can we play as advocates that are, yeah, like sometimes facing a lot of these like giant industries and special interests?
I'd encourage you to continue practicing it every moment. And let me give you two examples from med school where I practiced it. One was clinical. So my junior year on my OBGYN rotation, my resident within earshot of a patient called her a scumbag. And I immediately went and talked to my clerkship director about that. That was, an easy, obvious thing to do. But maybe a little more of a challenge. So I had, this was back in ancient times when we'd just gotten tobacco out of hospitals, in terms of people being able to smoke in hospitals. And I had developed a petition for the hospital gift shop to get them to stop selling tobacco. So I was very engaged in tobacco related issues, and I'm walking down the hall on my surgery rotation, and there's a doc walking in front of me smoking a cigar. And I walk up to him and I said, "Excuse me, sir, did you know that there's no smoking in the hospital anymore?" He said, "Young lady, do you know who I am?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, my name is Dr. Ellis Evans, and I am the chief of surgery." I said, "Well, sir, then you should know the rules." And he went and he put out his cigar. And of course, you all want to know, so what happened to me in my surgery evaluation? And this story is at the end of the article that I sent to you with the 10 criteria as well. I got nice things under my strengths, and under my own, as my only weakness, they said, "Erica has interests other than surgery." Which I was, pretty willing to own up to. So that's how I would encourage you to do it, Brianna, is to practice doing this every place you go, and it'll just, be more and more deeply embedded as a tick. Barb, did you have something you wanted to
Yeah, and actually, I'm really glad, Brianna, that you went ahead of me, because I found very interesting your question about whether the whether Erica's intervention with DuPont had a long-term impact. I'm particularly alert to that question because PSR is currently publishing a series of state-specific reports that look at the use of these PFAS chemicals in fracking. The whole class of PFAS chemicals, that PFOA is kind of one of the deadliest. These chemicals are used in many industrial and manufactured processes and products. That's one of the reasons why they're in all of our bodies. But we hadn't known that they were being used in fracking, which of course opens yet another pathway to exposure. So we're doing a series of reports that look actually at industry reported data to try to flag where those chemicals are being used. One of the things we found out when we wrote our first study on the subject is that DuPont spun off a kind of sister business. I forget their name, it's Chenille or something like that. And they gave them the production of PFAS chemicals. So they've kind of washed their hands of it, but they haven't solved the problem. So I think on the one hand, the problem hasn't been solved, and major corporations, I think, are still more interested in seeing how they can make profit than they are in saving the world. That's why we have to save the world. But at the same time, Erica, I want to say I found your story jaw-dropping, totally amazing. And I'm going to sit with it because it really might change my perspective, even after all these years, my perspective of skepticism to the point of disdain about the possibility of working effectively with corporations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barb. That's wonderful. Thank you. In terms of long-term implications, this was not just a small side project, right? This DuPont's 80,000, when I was working with them, 80,000 person company, right? And Savannah River site is one of the largest depositories in the world of spent nuclear fuel. I'm pretty convinced that well, certainly as the decade that I was there, DuPont never considered another nuclear project. And it was taken up by Westinghouse, but there's a small handful of companies that can legitimately bid on this kind of work. And they are pick-offable. So I think that it often just requires persistence. I want to tell you one other short, big PSR success story that was just extraordinary. So a decade ago, began getting annoyed by the fact that TIAA-CREF, which is a $1 trillion retirement fund, didn't offer a low or fossil fuel free or low carbon option. And so I worked with some other PSR board members, Kathy Falvo, Catherine Thomason, and Mona Sarfati, who the three of them may be familiar to some or all of you, particularly Mona and her work on climate change. And we went to TIAA-CREF and we met with their senior investment advisors in New York. And a year later, we had an option to be able to invest our money in. This was 6 years ago. And it's now a $1.1 billion fund. So I can put the link for that as well. But if you put in TIAA-CREF or Nuveen low carbon social choice, you'll see that. And that is another piece that I had no idea that anything would come of my writing this fetching note to TIAA-CREF saying, please give us this option. But there are now over $1 billion invested in a low carbon fund instead of someplace else as a result of one meeting with 4 PSR leaders and this large fund. So there are concrete major differences that can be made as individuals, to paraphrase Margaret Mead. All right, shall I go on to showing you a bit about NextGenU? Yeah, okay. All right, so screen and share and efficient beneficence. You guys are all over that. All right, so here is NextGenU, and I invented NextGenU in 2001 with the idea being democratizing education. And we've started doing so in health sciences. We have courses in all of these areas here. We offer, in terms of our programs, we offer the Annenberg Physician Training Program is in addiction medicine. We hold a $20 million grant endowment for that. Public Health U is a place where we have over 150 people now from 50 countries getting free or extremely low cost master's degrees in public health. So this is a place that you all can come back to. We have 2 US medical schools that have adopted our MPH offerings, one in Texas and one in New York. And the one in New York is opening it up globally starting this next year. So just for you to know, and low cost MPH is available through NextGenU, as well as all of these free courses, and they are being used in every country in the world now, and through over 70 US med schools and over 1,200 universities globally. So I wanted to show you in particular under public health, I wanted to show you our climate change and health course. So this is HPAS accredited. One of the organizations within NextGenU, sorry, I missed these last 2, is Humanitarian U. This is it was a for-profit that we absorbed. When I say we, the Ulrich and Ruth Frank Foundation for International Health, which is the foundation that I set up when I was a medical student as a thank you to my parents for putting me through all my education. And it now has all of these components within it. So Humanitarian U is who provides through HPAS this accreditation for this particular course. I'll get to that in just one second. I just want to show you guys this one other program that we're about halfway through now. A few years ago, 4 years ago, I decided that we really needed to have a full ladder from first grade to PhD. And we have pretty near everything done except for primary and secondary school education. So we got a grant for primary school education to teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math in primary school. And we are developing this in Benin, Cameroon, and Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay, so those are all of our programs. Now, to the courses, and specifically to climate change and health. And I'd encourage you to look at our clinical courses and our other public health courses too, but I want to just spend a moment here. So this is a large course that was patterned on the Norwegian Medical Association's climate change work, and but primarily on WHO and their initial issuance on climate change and health in 2008, and not initial, but an early one, on the Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education, and on competencies from Hopkins and CEF. CEF being the Council on Education for Public Health, the accreditor for the highest level accreditation for a public health school. So this course is a 3 credit hour course. It's a long course, suitable for if you really want to take a reasonably deep dive into these issues around climate change and health. There are these 5 modules to complete, and I'll show you what those look like in a moment. As with all Next Gen U courses, we have both didactics and activities that people participate in to make sure that they end up with both knowledge and skills. As I mentioned, a 3 credit hour course, so a really quite comprehensive course. And there are case studies. We often teach with case studies. So just to let you know that if you're interested in this as an individual, have at it. If you want your institution to adopt it for a lunch and learn series or an elective or whatever other modality you can think of, we're happy to support your institution with making that maximally useful for you. And then these are just to show you how courses are organized. We have these 5 modules, as I mentioned. They are organized into lessons with learning outcomes and with resources that one goes to. You read, the various resources that are linked to, you do a quiz or a discussion forum, which is laid out how one does that. This particular course includes one of my most favorite learning activities, which is an optional letter to the editor. That's something that, of course, we do a lot of at PSR, and it's a good thing to practice doing. So I think that that's most of what I wanted to show folks on Next Gen U and on the climate change and health course. Becca, was there anything else you wanted me to address with Next Gen U, or?
That was great. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you created some of the curriculum.
Yeah, so all of our, here, I can illustrate that quite nicely. Just let me pick a different course just so you have an opportunity to see a different course. So you can see that all of our courses, here, let me pick the lifestyle medicine course, because that might be another one that might interest you. All of our courses are constructed in a very similar kind of way. So we work with subject matter experts, as we always do, and then we use competencies that we perform crosswalks on, so we can fulfill all of the competencies of these various organizations, which give certification also often for our courses too, for this one in particular. So yeah, we take the competencies, we array them onto a spreadsheet, we pair them with outstanding existing resources from 4 sources: governments, professional societies, universities, and peer-reviewed journals. Those are our 4 authorized sources. Anything else on that?
I guess one other question I have is advice if you are trying to integrate or create climate and health curriculum in your school. I know a lot of our ambassadors are med students who are working tirelessly at integrating climate and health curriculum in their own schools. So maybe some words of wisdom on that.
Yeah. Um, well, I created this climate change and health course for such people, right? So you can do it at whatever depth you feel like doing it. You can do it over whatever length of time you want to do it. You can choose just one or two modules or a few readings from within the modules if you don't feel like getting a certificate in it. So the intention of this resource is exactly for this kind of audience, for people who are wanting to have a shortcut to getting their institutions to provide them with some support on that. I imagine that you can find faculty members through PSR who'd be willing to be mentors, or at your own institution, local folks who are working in local public health departments. You might also be able to find, if you want to have this be a mentor guided activity, you might be able to find folks there who have climate change and health responsibilities. Usually there's at least a person on the state level who has some sort of responsibility for that, who you might be able to enlist to come and be a guest speaker, say, for one of the sessions. Yeah, those would be, I guess that would kind of be the roster of places that I would think about initially. Barb, of course, has a list of thousands of docs just clamoring to do this kind of work. So
Thank you. I do want to open it up though. We have about 6 minutes left. I want to open it up for audience questions.
yeah, and I just for you to know, hey, Steve, I'm going from here to the IPPNW Canada board meeting, which I'm late for because of this meeting. So just for you to know, this is ongoing even after our next 6 minutes. Steve, go ahead.
Next Gen U is extraordinary. Could you say a little about the present scope in terms of numbers of people involved? I mean, it's quite amazing. I'd never heard of it, so I was behind on knowledge. And thank you for doing it.
Oh, thanks. Like I said, I invented it in 2001, 7 years before MOOCs came onto the scene. We are starting in health sciences. We should be done with health sciences in the next 2 or 3 years. And when I say done with, I am hoping that we will have not just a full MPH, but within a year, likely we'll have a full Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. And soon it looks like we will have a consortium to really start building a full MD-DO program. So that's sort of the present pieces. We are, after we finish health sciences and have a full curriculum, at least for those 3 graduate programs, we're wanting to move into other disciplines increasingly. The next degree that and training that I want to provide is law, because so much of the kind of work that we do could benefit from having massive numbers of people trained in law. And there are 5 states in the US that allow you to sit the bar, even if you haven't gone to law school. So we want to be doing education. Oh, and then the third piece, which will also be of interest to y'all, is sustainability through engineering. So we want to basically try to tackle as many of the gravest threats, as many of the SDGs as we can. And those three seem to me to be the most powerful levers for social change. Thank you.
I think Becky has
Yeah.
hand raised.
If you tackle law, you might find that the quality of teaching among law professors is pretty mediocre. I'll just put that out there. Anyway.
Yeah, and we get to fix that.
Well, actually, you should just look for teachers who don't teach at the elite law schools, because the quality of teaching actually is better sort of at the middle. I'll advise that. Anyway, do you have any advice? What I'm particularly interested in doing in Texas is starting to try to teach really specifically to the pollution and climate threats that are local and kind of most likely to be hurting people. And at this point, it's becoming, a lived reality. So, folks in the lower valley have flooding in their homes that doesn't actually recede for months. At times, it's sort of like our own little mini Pakistan. We have excessive heat, for 3 or 4 months out of the year. Suggestions for maybe training people who are already physicians and nurses and targeting, existing problems and kind of rolling out outreach to address the fact that, like, it's here.
Becky, I don't know that I have any suggestions that you and Lisa haven't already tried. I mean, all of the, I know how incredibly sophisticated Lisa is about community organizing. One of the things that I did when I was president in Atlanta, and also nationally, I guess I didn't mention that I was on the board of PSR for a decade and I was the president in 2008, is being white coat on call for Sierra Club, for Nature Conservancy, for community groups that were trying to work for social justice, to know that they could send me an email and have me show up at the legislature to testify for a few minutes, and we would. One thing that you all know this already, but one thing that really helps docs in this kind of situation is providing us with a script and a few, some abstracts, so that one doesn't have to, because we're all feeling like it's going to be junior year of medical school and we're going to be asked to, calculate a different creatinine clearance rate for people who get exposed to one thing or another, right? So if you can provide truncated materials and a script, I think that helps. I doubt that that's a novel notion to you, but
okay. Thanks.
So it is 9:01 Eastern time, 6 p.m. Pacific time. I did want to open up maybe one more question. If people want to stay on for longer, and I don't know, Erica, how much time you have left to answer the last question, maybe, or if you run off to your next meeting.
I'd be delighted to, sure.
Oh, you can go ahead, Daniel.
I'll take 2. Go ahead.
You may have already been touching on this in the sense that you were talking about like the role that physicians can provide by just being that like white coat on call. like, I see that as like more of a 20 to 30% of your time. Like, do you know like any roles that could be like, 80% kind of in that 70 to 80%? Like, I don't know, kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, so two answers to that. One is go into preventive medicine and population health, right? It's a great discipline. It's what you get to spend all day long doing every day, if that's what you choose to do. I've found being a preventionist to be rewarding all day long, every day, because you really do get to do this kind of work. Thanks for the atta girl on that too, Steve. The other way though, and this is a point I'd really wanted to make, so I'm glad you brought up this question, is avoiding a gilded cage. So if you don't have to be fancy, if you don't have to, so I drive a 2006 Prius, and I live in kind of a construction site because my husband's this incredibly imaginative builder, and I don't really care that my I'll tell you this one piece. I've worked with Mary Wynn Ashford, who founded IPPNW Canada and was international president, and she walked into my foyer, which is just like filled with a house in progress, and she said, "Erica, you are the most unusual person I've ever met." And she'd known me in lots of other ways before that, but being willing to live in circumstances that please you, that aren't necessarily, it isn't necessarily the car that you might expect to park in the doctor's parking lot. I really think that can help a lot. You can work fewer hours, so you can spend your time doing it, and you can donate funds that you do generate to something other than your gilded cage. So hopefully that's sufficient for now. Happy to do more of this with y'all subsequently. Mitchell, you want to go ahead and ask a quick question too?
Yeah, mine's kind of similar. I guess the concept of being a white coat on call really resonated with me. It's something interesting. I was kind of curious how you go about building those connections and just keeping those like doors open with local organizations so that you'd be the person.
Yeah, it's definitely exactly as you suggested, building those relationships. So it's a cumulative phenomenon. You find something that you both are interested in working on, and you do a good job with doing it. And you let them know, I'm happy to do this next time an issue comes up that you'd like to have a health perspective on. Yeah, that's, and letting that be known to the other folks who will be at whatever press conference or rally that you go to as well. And also very concretely wearing white coats, right? The performative theater aspect of this matters. So I'd really, that's, that is the tool, that is the costume that we have that really brings additional credibility to what we do. All right, I don't want to keep you guys any longer. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Happy to follow up with any of y'all. Oh, Ola, you wanted to say something? Or was that's a goodbye or an applause?
Clapping.
A clapping. Okay, hooray, yes, thank you. I applaud all of you as well. The fact that you're here, that you came, that you're that eager to invest even further as an advocate. I think of PSR and this kind of work as being absolutely, like I said, an extension and scaling of whatever aspirations you might have clinically to help people live healthier lives. I'm 60 and I've been doing this kind of work since I was 12-ish, and it still puts a grin on my face. So it's, yeah, being able to stumble upon a $1.1 billion way to redirect people's funds, it's so rewarding. It's so exciting. I'm so happy for you guys that you have these opportunities ahead of you. And I look forward to supporting you and PSR and making them come to reality.
And I just want to close by saying thank you, Erica, and thank you everyone for coming and for such a wonderful conversation. It really inspires me as well. And I will post a recording of this. And Erica, I don't know if you want to give me your email or post your email in the chat for further correspondences.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do so. And if you guys misplace that, you can also obviously find me at UBC as well. So that's there. And this is, if you want to do something non-UBC-ish, there's that. Yeah, look forward to hearing from y'all and collaborating with you on climate change education and any other bits that you might have been inspired by today. Thank you.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Bye, y'all.
Good night, everyone.